What is peer recovery coaching? So if you think about it, a peer recovery coach is a person in long-term recovery who works collaboratively with peers to help them do what? Achieve goals, solve problems, learn, and really to develop a full life in recovery. That's what we are all about, and that's the work that we are aiming to do. So a few things about peer coaching. It's very holistic, meaning we are looking at the whole life of the peer. Every aspect, we call it a domain, that is important to that peer, we will take a look at. And we'll have more on that in a little bit. But we try to heal every area of life that needs it. And then we come alongside a person. It could be before treatment, as they're leaving treatment. Maybe the person isn't in treatment and we are a standalone service, but we can come with that person. We stay in touch with our peer in a way that professional service providers just can't. So for example, that consistent contact might look like sending a text just to check in, sending an affirmation card. This is something I do. I've got an example of one, Surrender to Complete Healing. I will send little messages to my peers periodically just to let them know I'm thinking of them, I'm checking in with them in a sustained way. What else? We have evidence. We've always known in our guts that what we do works. Well, now it's an evidence-based practice that has shown that what we do works to help people find and sustain long-term recovery. So, any questions so far? You might have some as we go forward, and I will try to make sure I'm always monitoring the chat to make sure I meet your needs. So, more on what is recovery coaching. It supports multiple pathways to recovery. And maybe you've heard that term, and I've got some listed. So some people find recovery through clinical treatment, some people through 12-step programs only, some through peer support, some with their faith through the churches, some with medication assistance. Sometimes we have people that just want to do harm reduction and use less to try to find a bit of recovery in that way, and natural recovery on their own. I bet you can think of other pathways to recovery. And if you have ideas, I'd love to see them in the chat. But what's unique about peer support and peer recovery coaching, we honor any pathway to recovery, and all are acceptable, and there's no judgment. So anyone have any other ideas for what other kinds of pathways there might be? If not, family support, absolutely. Sometimes our families can help us find recovery. Sometimes they're the reason we need recovery. But okay, so I think you guys are getting the idea. Therapy, absolutely. Wellness-based practices like RAP. Thank you for sharing that, Brendan. Absolutely. And in fact, many of us as peer coaches are trained in RAP as a way to help someone have a plan for their wellness. Okay, so this very important part of what we do, honoring all pathways. Another thing I want to draw your attention to, and this is on page 4 of your workbook. We are called many names. So you might hear peer recovery coaches called a peer recovery coach, maybe just a peer coach, a recovery mentor, a recovery navigator. And by the way, they're putting peer recovery navigators in emergency rooms all across California right now. And I've seen some work in counties around that. We are called peer personal recovery assistants, recovery support coordinators. What's in a name? All of us do essentially the same work, which is provide the peer support, which I will be elaborating on. And no matter what we're called, we offer peer-to-peer support because we have lived experience and we walk through someone through recovery step by step. Now, what are we not? Let's clarify so that you get a better idea. We are not considered medical professionals or substance use disorder counselors. We are not sponsors or therapists, and we're not any kind of a minister, rabbi, or priest. We do, however, have some things similar to these folks. We have a code of ethics. We honor confidentiality. We practice professional boundaries, and we have training on that. We may not have the ability to diagnose. That's not our job. We leave that up to the professionals, but we share information about recovery. We help the peer change the behaviors that have that need changing, and help them carry out the tasks that will rebuild their lives. And we're a little more available than some of these folks, although some of us have business hours because we work for certain organizations that have like a 8 to 5. We do tend to be more available, either via text, email, a phone call. If someone is in crisis, we are not crisis providers. We hook them up with services, but we are available. And I know I have responded to my peers even late at night when I think it's important that I get back to them. So that kind of gives you an idea of some differences. And here's some more ideas where some of the confusion lies. It's like, well, how are you different from a treatment counselor? How are you different from a 12-step sponsor? Why would I need both? Well, let me outline some differences. Dallas, you created this slide and I really appreciate it. So here's some key differences. Both 12-step sponsors and peer recovery support specialists have lived experience. A treatment counselor may or may not, but they have professional training. We have training. 12-step sponsors, I don't believe, have the professional kind of training that we get. Let's look at the honoring of multiple pathways. Definitely, peer support specialists honor all pathways to recovery. 12-step sponsor typically is promoting the 12-step program, and a treatment counselor, they're promoting a formal treatment plan as they've been trained. Ideally, they would explore multiple pathways, though. We, as peer support specialists, don't give advice. We don't counsel. We leave the counseling up to our treatment counselors. I do know 12-step sponsors typically do tend to give advice. But for us, we try to understand that nobody knows better than the peer what the peer needs. We come alongside them and we are equals. As far as supervision, definitely peer coaches are supervised, as are our treatment counselors. They are clinically supervised. 12-step sponsors do not have supervision. And relationship lengths, ours can vary. It can be long-term. It may be short-term. It's whatever the peer decides. A sponsor can sometimes have a long-term relationship, and our treatment counselors kind of restricted time. And then as far as who directs the plan with peer support specialists, the peer directs where that wellness plan goes versus treatment counselors might be more directive, and sponsors are going to direct them in the 12-step program. I hope that clarifies some differences. Does anyone have questions about that? Okay, well, so what is peer recovery coaching? What are we doing? We are offering support, and we get trained in these various kinds of support: emotional, informational, instrumental, and affiliational. Let me explain. Emotional, this is just us fostering hope. If they don't believe in themselves, it's us trying to get them to believe in themselves, to identify their resilience and their confidence and grow their self-esteem. Informational, we're a resource connector, so providing resources and building skills. Instrumental might be hooking someone up with housing, transportation, preparing them for employment. We are advocates for our peers. And then affiliational, I put this little flyer. This is an example of affiliational. Connecting people to to safe, sober events, such as our ice cream social and game night that's actually happening on June 3rd in Orange County. And that's an example of connecting people in a healthy way to social events, because the opposite of addiction is connection. And we try to connect in all kinds of ways to support our peers. Now, here's some examples. You can all read those. Can you think of other examples that a peer recovery support coach might be offering? You know, housing, job training. What other examples can you come up with, and maybe just put them in the chat? Other examples of how we could support a peer, so we get a real firm example. Anyone have any ideas? Resume writing, yes. Coaching and education options, absolutely. I know I hooked up one of my peers with REI, so they're now in a training program, vocational training resources, filling out forms for social services, or SSI. Somebody said, what's the difference? Whoa, I just lost it. What's the difference between peer support and case management? Peer support and case management. Well, I believe there are quite a few similarities. We're managing that person. Case management is more with a professional position. We don't consider ourselves case managers per se. Dallas, you're my program coordinator. Can you weigh in? I mean, we are managing someone's life.
It's my sense a little bit that case managers are often representative of like state organizations, and they often have a set of criteria that the person that they're overseeing needs to adhere to, and they're usually, making sure that the person is doing what is on the in a lot of cases a mandated plan. And, whereas we're much more closer to a life coach. I like to use that example. I go, we're life coaches across all the domains of life, but we specialize in people that are in recovery from substance use and mental health challenges.
Okay. And thank you, Dallas. And there's somebody, Michael, said this: case management has a power differential, strictly directive. Beautifully said, Michael. Thank you for that. And Dallas, thank you for expanding. So there is this power differential, which we don't have as peer support specialists.
And Ella mentioned in there as well that case managers are usually not required to have lived experience in substance use or mental health challenges. And lived experience is the #1 job requirement for peer specialists.
Absolutely. So I have a little group activity. I hope our breakout groups go a little smoother this time. I want you to think about, now that you kind of are getting introduced to what we do, I want you to brainstorm just for a few minutes on what we've covered so far. What are the benefits? Can you think of any benefits of a peer recovery coach for the peers that we serve? Think about this in terms of, if they already have a sponsor or a treatment counselor, would there be any need for a peer coach? So I want you to get in your groups, think about that, and then get ready, somebody, to put your group's feedback in the chat when we get back. Are you guys ready? So welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a minute to brainstorm the benefits of having a peer recovery coach. I would love to have my reporters put in the chat any of the benefits that your group came up with, and hopefully you have a couple. So what would be the benefit of having inspiration from someone with lived experience? Absolutely. That was from room 11. Treatment information and understanding substance use disorder. Anyone else? Any other groups come up with able to help the peer to integrate the information of working with other providers, because that can be overwhelming for our peers. Sometimes they're working with the courts and with social services and with the district attorney for child support, it can be overwhelming. Peer coaches have availability to resources, and we know how to hook you up. Someone relatable, fill in gaps not addressed by other support folks. Multiple modalities. How about help navigating? Wow, you guys are doing it so fast. Okay. Help navigating. Uh-oh, I lost it. All around assistance, reliability and accountability as a friend, as opposed to that clinical approach. Dallas, if you're seeing any, being open-minded, I saw that.
Training in areas of assistance more so than a sponsor. When you have a setback, a safe place to get support.
Yeah, I hope you guys are reading through the chat. These truly are the benefits of having a peer recovery coach. So I really appreciate you sharing. Before we move on, I wanted to ask Merlin to share a kind of a quote that I think he might have shared in his breakout group, but kind of nails down the difference between, especially between a sponsor and a peer coach. Merlin, could you unmute yourself and share your wisdom?
Thank you. And I am a peer coach, and I've also been a sponsor and been sponsored. And the simple statement is this, that sponsorship, if I'm a sponsor, it's about you and me, but a lot about me and my recovery. If you're a peer coach, it's about you, the coachee, your plan, your thoughts, your commitment, and your forthrightness and trust in us.
Yeah, thank you, Merlin. Merlin's on our board of directors, and we are so fortunate to have him. Thank you for sharing that, Merlin.
Yeah, I mentioned to the group, which is another very important point. It has to do with trust, and it's something that I also heard, remember, and repeat, and that is, they don't care what we know until they know that we care.
You know, and I'm going to piggyback on that, Merlin. You know, I have a peer right now who back in January didn't feel like she really needed a recovery coach right now. But I know as a coach that it is my job to keep a connection going. You don't want to be obtrusive, but just, so I would send little affirmation cards to this individual, maybe a couple a week, letting her know I'm thinking of you. I believe in you. Hope you're all right. And sure enough, come April, she contacted me and said that it was my believing in her, my caring about her, my sending her those affirmation cards and surrender to let her think that, somebody actually cares about me, that helped her get back on track with her recovery. And now she's asking for support and for peer coaching again. And I'm just so glad I kept that connection with her, because it helped her like an umbilical cord to life, she said. And she's so grateful. That's what makes this work so life-giving and fills me with purpose. So next,